Mostly cloudy today and tonight. Scattered rain showers and a few thunderstorms expected. There might be some moderate to heavy rain, and the temperatures in the mid-80s during the day, around 70 tonight, all related to the dissipating tropical system moving up from Texas. Saturday and Sunday, a slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm, partly sunny in the mid to upper 80s, and this weekend is the last weekend of summer. Fall arrives on Monday. Your life, your music, we're KLEK 102.5 FM.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. Marches are taking place in around 150 countries in support of action against climate change. US President Trump says claims he made a promise to a foreign leader that led to a formal complaint by a whistleblower are fake news. The UK's Brexit Secretary is in Brussels for talks with EU negotiator Michel Barnier, with mixed reports on progress towards a deal. And researchers from more than a dozen nations are launching the biggest and most complex expedition ever attempted in the Central Arctic.
It's 9:01.
Community Conversations is brought to you by Arkansas Early Learning, offering no-cost childcare in Jonesboro and Northeast Arkansas. Applications at arearlylearning.org.
Arkansas Early Learning is a nonprofit organization.
KLEK LP Jonesboro, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. It's now time for Community Conversations, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place, while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. Oh no, Friday. It's Friday. Happy Friday to you. I hope everyone is having a better start to their day than I am. You're tuned into Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. My special guests today are here representing the Arkansas Poor People's Campaign. Reverend C.W. Campbell is the, he's on number?
I'm the organizing leader.
Okay, organizing leader. Mm-hmm. All right, and so then we have two other representatives that are partners with the organization, Ms. Yesenia Hernandez and Reverend Dr. Joshua Daniel. So thank you all so much for joining us on today. So number 6. All right, so we're just going to go around the table and give some introductions so that people know who you are, even though most of you, well, Mr. Reverend Joshua, you're new, so
yes, that's right.
But we're still going to go around and give some introductions and tell us what role you play with the Poor People's Campaign. And so, gentlemen, it's going to be ladies first on today.
My name is Yesenia Hernandez. I am the chair for Jonesboro Committees for Arkansas United, which is an immigrant advocacy group.
Okay.
I'm also the president of Northeast Arkansas Pride. I'm on the state board for the Arkansas Parent Teacher Association, and I'm the events lead in Jonesboro for Moms Demand Action.
All right, you wear a lot of hats. All right, Reverend Dr. Joshua.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Joshua Daniel, I moved to Jonesboro just over a year ago after completing 3 years in seminary. I worked at the University of Arkansas as a chaplain, as the Episcopal chaplain there, completing a PhD in philosophy, and an Episcopal priest at St. Mark's Jonesboro, here in Jonesboro, and very glad to be here.
All right. I want to say bless you for getting a PhD in philosophy. I took philosophy my freshman year, and I didn't think I was going to survive just one class.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. No, it is. I'm similarly deficient in math.
Okay.
I took math for dummies in college and barely passed, so I hear you.
All right. And Reverend C.W. Coleman, good morning.
Good morning. And of course, to this great listening audience, we are grateful for the privilege to be here on today. I am the coordinating leader of the Arkansas Coordinating Committee for the Arkansas Poor People Campaign. I also have been in ministry for 40 years. I'm the former state director of home missions for the Consolidated Missionary Baptist State Convention of Arkansas. So many of the areas that the Poor People's Campaign is addressing, those are things that I did for 7 years in that capacity. And I'm a former pastor of 3 churches in North Carolina.
Okay. Well, I'm sure the people that you have interacted with here in Arkansas are happy to have you back in Arkansas. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our topic today. We will be discussing a national call for moral revival. There's an article that is in the Herald, and I want to encourage everyone to please pick up your copy. Is the Herald still a nonprofit organization?
The Herald is produced by Arkansas State University.
Oh, it's Arkansas State. Okay.
And so it is free, but you
Okay.
have to go to the campus in order to get a copy.
Well, go and support the students that put in their hard work, that are learning how to be journalists.
I would like to say I was surprised that they put us on the front page.
Okay. That's
and so we're grateful
awesome.
for that.
There's an
Alright.
online copy also that
Okay.
people can get access to.
So please go out and support and get your copy of the paper, whether digital or print. So let's talk about what is this national call for moral revival.
Well, actually, it is a reboot of the 1968 Poor People's Campaign
Okay.
that was initiated by Dr. M.L. King Jr. And SCLC. But I need to regress just a little bit further.
Okay.
The actual Poor People's Campaign started with the Continental Congress.
Wow. Okay.
Started right there on the floor of the Continental Congress when they created, in the process of creating the U.S. Constitution. If you notice, there are 10 amendments to that Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why were those not included as articles?
They had to keep going back and changing and adding and say, okay, well, we need to add this and add this and add this.
Well, what it is far more difficult to change an article
Okay.
than to
Add
amend an amendment.
Okay.
And so people there who had fought in the Revolutionary War were concerned about the poor whites and the poor blacks who gave their lives and their blood for freedom. And yet they were not allowed to be a part of that process. They were not in the Continental Congress. No one who was poor was there. They were all landowners.
Okay.
And then, although it's not stated in the Constitution, the only people who had the authority to vote were white men who had land. So if you didn't have land, you didn't have rights.
You were kind of... All right, so you were eliminated from the conversation and any decisions that were being made for the general population at that time.
Right. And so we still have the same struggle for civil rights and human rights.
Okay.
You know, people, hey, it's all right for you to die for the country, but you can't decide the laws for the country for
Wow.
which you have fought for.
Oh, wow.
So-
All right, so we're going to get into what is actually going to be taking place. I want to say good morning to Ms. Shanquetta Cunningham, Mrs. Shanquetta, and anyone else out there that's listening and watching. Please share this video and share this information. According to the article, you will have an open meeting set for 10 a.m. on September 21st, which is tomorrow, at First Presbyterian Church Fellowship Hall. And so tell us more about what people can expect at this open meeting.
Well, I'm sure glad you asked because we definitely want individuals to come, and we are concerned about human beings. So if you're a human, please come.
Okay.
We are also concerned about the rights of every individual. We don't care who you are, what you believe, what you think, even if you are positive or negative. You have rights.
Okay.
And so that's what we're about. We are about offending the rights of everyone, but from a moral perspective. The reality is there are many laws that are immoral in America, but they are legal.
I remember reading about the concept. I'm a sociology major, and in my social stratification class, there was a section about just because something is legal, is it moral? And so there was a lot of discussion about that, and we had to write a paper on it, but it won't get too deep in that. But yes, we do. I say we as a collective need to really start looking at some of the laws, rules, whatever, and say, okay, let's look at this from a more moral perspective and start treating people better than we are as a whole. I want to read this one line from the article. It says about 40% of Americans are below the poverty line, poor people. Over 14,000 of those living in poverty are right here in Jonesboro. That's kind of sad. It's really, and not to, put Jonesboro down. We are a growing community. However, we can use some improvement.
Well, the reality is systems are in place that perpetuate poverty, but they also perpetuate wealth. Right now in this country, there are 3 people who possess $283 billion in wealth. 3 people.
3 people.
They have more money than 160 million people who live in this country right now. Those 3. And that wasn't by accident. That was by design.
Okay.
Design.
Wow. We have a comment from Mrs. Shanquetta. She says, I really want to take part, but will have to miss tomorrow's meeting. Is it held every 3rd Saturday? Will there be another meeting outside of the one tomorrow?
Right. We are looking to having another meeting on the 2nd Saturday in November.
Okay.
2nd Saturday in November. Presently, we have not secured a location,
Okay.
but we're in the process of doing that.
Okay. And so during the meeting, what are some items you will discuss in reference to the needs of the poor people or those living in poverty?
Well, as stated in our ad in the Jonesboro Sun, and also possibly, and also in the Herald, we are going to be dealing with systems of poverty, racism, fair housing, immigrant rights, increasing the minimum wage, access to health care, the war economy, the prison industrial complex, voter suppression, environmental injustice, and distorted and immoral narratives.
Okay.
And the most crucial thing is, or should I, yes, are the stories that people are sharing that really create the dissensions and the divisions within this country. And all of that is by design.
Okay.
By design.
Hi. Come on in, sir. And we have another guest joining us. And when you get situated, can you go ahead and state your name for our listeners and viewers, sir?
My name is Kaleem Nazim. I'm a resident here at Jonesboro. I guess the organization I represent is Incarcerated Children Advocacy Network. It's an organization out of Washington, D.C., which is trying to end juvenile life without sentences.
Okay.
So it's nice to be with you guys this morning.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I remember reading about that, again, going back to classes I've taken, juvenile criminology class focused on the juvenile population. I remember reading a bunch of articles on how children, they're under 18, are being sentenced so harshly, for certain crimes when some adults are not being sentenced
Yes, ma'am.
that harsh, and they're actually trying to, I guess depending on the crime, trying to give them basically life without possible parole, depending on, and I understand they committed a crime, there needs to be a sentence, but I don't know, I have different thoughts and views on how some things can be done.
Well, in 2012, the United States Supreme Court passed a law saying that it was unconstitutional to give a juvenile a mandatory sentence of life without parole, and the state of Arkansas is now in the process of rectifying a lot of them wrongs that was committed against them juveniles so long ago. Also, just this weekend, this Saturday in Alabama, a group of progressive prosecutors got together and trying to figure out ways to apply Miller versus Alabama, and there was the statute of the law that was passed in 2012. So that's what I'm here for today as an advocate for juveniles who have been harshly sentenced.
Okay. Well, we definitely have to continue that conversation, have
Yes,
you back
ma'am.
as a guest and to share more information. Now, tying that into the conversation today with the Poor People's Campaign, do you feel that many of those individuals that get caught up in that system are those that live at the poverty line or below?
Yes, ma'am, most definitely. It has been proven that a lot of people who receive harsh sentences as juveniles, and also people who find themselves on death row, are people who have been affected by systematic poverty.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I want to bring our two guests in to share in relation to the Poor People's Campaign. How are your organizations, how is the partnership tied into based on the individuals that you represent?
So with Arkansas United, we focus with immigration rights, and like here in Jonesboro, I actually just went through training in Dallas in August, and we got training on how to become better advocates. And one of the things that we had to look into were 287G agreements. And those are agreements where local and state law enforcement can act like ICE within jails. And they were talking about how there were 2 or 3 counties. This is completely voluntary. And they were talking about how 2 or 3 counties in the state of Arkansas have done this. And I thought, oh, I should look up, and I looked on the website for Immigration and Customs, and it was Craighead County was one of those counties that signed that agreement this year. So they made that agreement in February of this year. The memorandum wasn't available online. Actually, I met with the sheriff, with the president of the NAACP, and the Democratic chair here in Craighead County, and we were able to have a conversation. This agreement can be stopped at any point. Okay. And as of right now, our sheriff has chosen to still go on with it. It hasn't been implemented yet, okay, but there's a lot of fear within the community because this can allow for racial profiling. And this summer, 2 people were stopped near campus, and ICE was there within minutes. And I had another individual contact me that his father, someone's father, was arrested for having windows too dark. So he got stopped. He was driving with a suspended license. They weren't sure of his documentation. I don't know where the papers were, maybe something wasn't kept up to date. But within 7 hours, the family didn't know that he was in the jail, and so they went to go bail him out, and they were like, he's already in ICE hold. And it was 7 hours after the arrest. So there was, unless our counties are working with ICE, there should be no reason why ICE should know that that individual was there. A couple weeks ago, they just had 2 deputies that graduated from the training from South Carolina, I believe. And so I'm probably here in the next week going to try to start getting people within the community to get involved to try to stop from this happening.
I want to say I don't know everybody's story, but I do know some people personally from years past that did come over and were trying to get legalized and trying to go through the process. It is a very lengthy and very costly process. And so from your experience and the individuals that you have encountered and advocate for, have they not tried to plead that or try to get the courts or what other authorities to understand that I am trying, but here are the roadblocks that I'm facing?
I'm a naturally born citizen. My parents are both from El Salvador. Both of them came during the 80s, so they were granted amnesty. Okay. But do you know any of the history of El Salvador, by any chance? No. So El Salvador is this tiny little country. It literally fits in the state of Arkansas 6 times, 6.5 times. That's how small it is. It has twice the population. It's 6 million people as opposed to 3 million of Arkansas. I think in 2015, the murder rate of Arkansas was maybe 7 per 100,000, and in El Salvador it was 104, 105. And that's for a country that is not at war. So back in the 80s, the Reagan administration, during the Red Scare, they aided in giving money to the government, which was right-leaning, and then the people were trying to, there was a civil war. So they ended up investing a ton of money, training, firearms, and the most recent massacre in Latin American history is in El Salvador, where over about 1,000 people were killed, women and children were raped, people were burned. So this happened in the 80s. A lot of the children fled and came to the United States, and then you have a lot of them without parents. They're trying to seek refuge. They weren't able to get it. So a lot of them went to LA, and in order to protect themselves from Mexican and black gangs, they created the MS-13. So that is how the MS-13 was created. In the 90s, whenever the El Salvadoran War was over, during the Clinton administration, they decided to deport all these criminals back to El Salvador. So, out of sight and out of mind. So what happened was this tiny country with a very fragile government ended up having all of these all these people come in with criminal past. I don't want to say with criminal past, and it's just been unstabilized since then. So my Aunts and my cousins came and traveled thousands of miles. We had a family member that was raped when she was 12 years old. Platinum 13 member. My aunt was told that they would cut off her tongue or kill her if she tried to do anything, so they fled and they came here. And even with those stories, they actually got caught in Mexico, and so they got sent back to El Salvador. So they came back again. And these are the youngest one is an 8-year-old was in a prison in Mexico. So whenever people say Mexico doesn't try to stop them coming, they definitely do. Okay. So my cousins were put in those detention centers. They were put. The immigration officers literally told them put them in the dog cages, put them in the freezer. And they were there for they were in the centers for about a month. And even though my family went through every court date and made sure they never left the state, they never got to go to Branson with us on a trip, did everything that they could, spent tens of thousands of dollars. And even, I know my family spent well over $50,000 trying to get them legalized, and they still got rejected.
And that is just one out of thousands of stories. Many people that have tried to get their documentation in order and get legalized or just get a green card, or I don't know what the proper term is, just to be considered a citizen, and they are having to jump through all these hoops and loops and get denied and just kind of railroaded. And so here we are. Again, I have lots of thoughts on the process, and this is not the time for that, but I would love to see a lot of reform. And so I'm hoping through the Poor People's Campaign, you all can help all these people with these different stories to get the access to the resources they need to elevate them wherever they are in their life. We have a comment. Oh, we're going to get ready for a break. We have a comment right quick from J. Derek Smith, who says, OMG. She is, okay, your singing is wonderful. Thank you for that. When we come back, we'll bring Reverend Dr. Joshua in and Dr. Campbell in to give us more information about what people can expect during the meeting tomorrow. We're going to take a quick break. You're tuned in to Community Conversations. We'll be right back after these announcements.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
Is your child headed for trouble? I'm Mark Merrill with today's Family Minute. As parents, it's our duty to keep an eye on our kids. That includes looking for any danger signs you might see as they travel through those young years. Here are some warning signs that your child may be headed for trouble and solutions to lead them back on the right road. First, your child may be headed for trouble when they have excessive mood swings. If they're going from extreme highs to extreme lows, instead of blaming your child, ask them how they're really feeling. The second sign your child is headed for trouble is when they start withdrawing socially or expressing hopelessness. If so, encourage them, lift them up, let them know how awesome they are, and help them develop good relationships with other friends. Remember, your family first.
Family Minute is made possible by the Kappa Nu Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a nonprofit organization committed to service to all mankind. Kappa Nu Omega Alpha Kappa Alpha on Facebook and KNOMEGA1908.com.
Family Minute is brought to you by the Gears Foundation, a nonprofit organization providing students with assistance in their academic and career pursuits. Gears Foundation on Facebook, Gears_Inc. on Instagram, and the Gears Foundation at gmail.com.
Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Matthew 19:26. With a motto of invest in your future, not your landlord's, Sonia Sanders Realtor is there for you throughout the entire process, whether buying or selling a home. Listings and other information is available at soldinjonesboro.com, Sonia Sanders Realtor on Facebook, or 870-275-8712.
The Office of Diversity and Community Engagement at Arkansas State University, under the leadership of Dr. Maurice Gibson, is a proud supporter of KLEK and is dedicated to finding innovative ways to advance their mission of creating a diverse and inclusive environment, conducive to educating, enhancing, and enriching lives, uplifting various and diverse groups on the A-State campus, and striving to maintain Arkansas State University a place that is inclusive to all individuals, regardless of origin, color, religion, socioeconomic status, or sexual orientation. More information about the Arkansas State University Office of Diversity and Community Engagement is available at www.astate.edu/diversity and 870-972-3081.
Experience the joy with Bishop Adrian R. Rogers, pastor of Fullness of Joy Church, 2120 Thorn Street, Jonesboro, Arkansas, 72401. Wednesday night, Word and Worship, 7 p.m. Prayer Thursday night at 7 p.m. Sunday School, 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning worship, 11 o'clock a.m. And our Sunday night live service at 7 p.m.
From the KLEK Community Calendar, the Valley View PTA will be hosting the annual Valley View Fall Festival, Saturday, September 28th from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. This event will be located at the Valley View baseball fields located on the west side of campus and will include more than 30 game booths, gaming bus, giant inflatables, local arts and craft vendors, barbecue, homemade baked goods, a silent auction, an old-time country store, family-friendly entertainment, demonstrations, and more. More information available at the website www.valleyviewpta.org/fall-festival.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
Welcome back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. My special guests today are I'm gonna start from the beginning. Reverend C.W. Campbell, who is the coordinating leader of the Poor People's Campaign, and then other representatives from partnering organizations, Ms. Yesenia Hernandez, Reverend Dr. Joshua Daniel, and Mr. Kaleem Nazim. Thank you all for joining us this morning. So we're going to bring Reverend Dr. Joshua in to talk about how his organization is partnering with the Poor People's Campaign.
Yeah, again, it's great to be here and be around this table with everyone. I'm representing just a church, St. Mark's Episcopal Church, and so many Christians out there who fundamentally understand that the gospel is about Jesus speaking directly and trying to heal and make whole those who are on the margins of society. Okay. And this is a conversation had throughout the Bible, not just with Jesus, but all the prophets, from Moses to Jeremiah to Jesus to Paul. All one of their central messages was our responsibility to the poor. Right now in church we're reading through the Gospel of Luke, and Gospel of Luke, that midsection, Jesus just systematically attacks the religious establishment of the time and also the state, and he ends so many of his stories and parables with a call to give up their wealth, to sell their possessions. Literally, he says, sell your possessions 4 or 5 times in the Gospel of Luke. And then the famous kind of Sermon on the Plains where Jesus says, blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of God. But woe to the rich, for they receive their consolation. And so all these conversations that we've had this morning about the need for immigration reform and prison reform and poverty in Jonesboro, each of these things speak to an essential element of our faith, which is the need to treat every person with dignity. And the people who often do not get treated with dignity are the poor in our community and in this country. And the call to moral revival, it's a revival because so much of this country has been formed through conversations in faith and commitments of faith. And yet this essential part of our faith that's written throughout the Bible, and it's just a fundamental aspect of it, is ignored by so much of the Christian community and so many of the Christians in this community. And so the call for a revival is a call specifically for those who have wealth, to be more generous with that wealth and to consider the needs and the plight of those who are on the fringes of society, and to not think about this in terms of citizenship. Before we are citizens, we are Christians, we are children of God, and that is something that that goes above law or nationality or race. And we've got a lot of work to do.
For those that may say, I don't want to give up all of my money. I don't give all, I got mine, they get theirs. Some people have these attitudes, and I haven't heard it directly, but Facebook is a wonderful place. You see all kinds of conversations, good, bad, and ugly. And so for those that may say, well, they stereotype and categorize individuals who live in poverty, and so they lump everyone together, feeling that as if they have this similar mindset of they don't want any better, they don't want to rise above, they're satisfied with what is. So what do you say to those people that try to push back and say, well, I worked hard, I did this and I did that, they can do the same?
Well, one of the reasons that we're meeting tomorrow is so we can get so many people from the community together in the same room to talk about these things, so we can hear some of those stories, but also to invite people who are poor to come directly to be a part of these conversations, so that it's not just a bunch of community leaders talking about poverty, but we're hearing directly from people who are poor. My church is donating 40 jet passes to Salvation Army and other hub to help people get there. Because we want to hear directly from them. A quote I heard recently that really sunk in was that discrimination is hard to do up close. It's something we do from a distance. And the closer we get to people, the harder it is to have these things that make a lot of sense on Facebook and social media, but don't make a lot of sense when you looking someone directly in the eye, hearing the story from Yesenia and her family. Hopefully that's moving to people to not think about immigrants as this faceless other. The other thing I would say real quickly is that these conversations that we hear on Facebook happen in the Bible. And when you kind of dig past the kind of ancient form that it takes, you see Jesus, for instance, just last week we read in church, Jesus, that the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling. We're grumbling because Jesus sat down to eat with tax collectors and prostitutes. And so the Facebook message there is, a self-respecting person wouldn't do something like that. And I'm not going to associate myself. Now, the Pharisees being the kind of religious establishment, right? We're not going to, just having that connection with this person is going to bring shame on me. And so we need to exclude this person. And then Jesus tells the famous three famous parables: the story of the lost sheep, and the shepherd who lost 99, who did the dangerous thing to leave his flock to find the one; the story of the lost coin, and the prodigal son. And so each of these stories, Jesus is elevating those whom society says are not important, that they've made the bad decisions in their life and they're going to have to live with it. No, Jesus treats these people with dignity and respect.
That reminds me of, there's a book that I'm trying to get deeper into called Toxic Charity, and I've also had to watch a documentary. Sorry, I can't think of the name. It's on Netflix. I had to watch it for a class, and in the common theme is people need a hand up, not a handout. And there are some people who don't know where to access these, whatever resources they may need. So those of us who have the privilege and the knowledge, we need to be willing to, in essence, lower ourselves and get to know the person that needs the help and say, okay, here's XYZ resource. Here's how you access them. If you need any additional help, I'll, do what I can. But they don't need you to give them something for one day. It's the same, the teach a man to fish deal.
Right.
We need to not meet their immediate need for that moment. We need to help them learn how to sustain their needs.
Yeah, which is CW. You might want to speak to this. I mean, part of the focus of the Poor People's Campaign it is not just on immediate needs, but about systemic racism, systemic poverty, and as well-meaning as so many members of our community might be, it's these structural issues that are preventing a society of true justice.
Well, I want to yield this time to the only female that's represented.
The what?
You respond.
I'm sorry.
like, what am I? I was like so focused, and I was like waiting for you, so I was like, I forgot what the question or what I was supposed to.
Yeah. Right. I recognize you have to leave, so I wanted to.
Oh no, I'm fine. I'm still fine. I just saw the time. I'm like, oh no, I'm good.
But the reality is, this country was founded on racism, white supremacy. Wasn't just in America. That was what European society was all about. They called it mercantilism. Very few people mention it. It's not capitalism. It's mercantilism. It's still doing the same thing. And it was about suppression. It was about world conquest and suppression and the acquisition of those other areas in the world of their natural resources so they could be enriched. And I'll give this one good example. Back in, I believe it was BC or AD, you know, right there in that end time, Rome had a post, a fort, in what we now know as England.
Okay.
Well, they were running around with bows and arrows and hardly had on any clothes. But they had a fort there. Now, were they there to protect the citizens of that area? No. They were there to take their natural resources. They take their natural resources, send it back to Rome. And America has over 800 military posts around the world. Are they there for protection? I don't think so. I think they're there to empower multinational corporations to access those different countries' natural resources so they can be sold more cheaply in America and other parts of the world. That's just my thinking.
Sure.
All right, so to kind of, bring back around to the topic, some of the items that are on the list for the national call for more revival. As mentioned before, systems of poverty, racism, fair housing, immigration rights, increasing the minimum wage, access to health care, the war economy, the prison industrial complex, voter suppression, environmental injustice, and distorted and immoral narratives. We have seen the issue of voter suppression happen not just during the last major election time, but over the past years. There have been many districts that have been what they call redlined or rezoned and gerrymandered and all those things. And so just to either push people out of a certain voting district to favor whatever candidate is running for that area. And again, I'm not going to get too deep in that. I'm not a politician, but we have seen things and that have been very unfair. And again, we need to start having these conversations more about all of these issues. And as you mentioned before, Dr. Joshua, it's hard to discriminate up close. So we get in the presence of others, and those others who are either more privileged, more wealthy, if they can see the real faces and hear the real stories of people that are actually living this life. There are many that I know personally are working 2 or 3 jobs. Yes, they may have several children, they are married, but they are trying to rise above. Sometimes they don't have enough to put in savings. They don't have enough to invest in stocks and bonds. They're just trying to live day to day. So what suggestions do people have for them? Are they going to give them another job that's paying more? Or let's change the system to make sure they're making more. That's just one example.
I'd like to add, as it relates to the scriptures rather, the love of money. The love of money is the root of all evil. And so greed motivates people. If they figure that they can make you work for $7 or $8, then that means they save so much more on your labor per hour. So they do not see you as a person, as an individual. They see you as a tool to create more wealth for themselves. And so when we dehumanize other people, we do not care about their suffering. We're not concerned about that. We are more concerned about how am I ingratiated as a result of your labor. And so that's why people work 3 jobs. That's why. It's about money.
And still not able to afford health insurance, for instance, working 3 jobs. I mean, yeah. Yes. So part of this group and part of our meeting tomorrow is to talk about these universal scope issues about systematic oppression and systematic poverty and how that affects. The keynote speaker is the co-chair for the Arkansas Poor People's Campaign for the state. He'll be there and able to speak very articulately about those. But also, the reason why we're having it in Jonesboro and not in Little Rock is to be able to talk about local action here. How can we as a community organize to deal with some of these very large issues, but in concrete ways, that we're not going to be just passive participants in injustice, but do our part, however small, but still make meaningful strides in addressing these issues in our community. I think that's a primary focus.
But the key thing is you all have taken the initiative to start the conversation. And this conversation needs to continue and gain momentum, and not just in Jonesboro. Hopefully this will spark a mighty flame that will, spread all across the nation, and more people will be inspired to stand up and be advocates. And
I'm sure that there are some areas of this community that are already having some of those conversations, and we invite them to come. There's lots of different partners already. Anyone listening who is already trying to address these type of issues, we want to kind of get everyone around the table to figure out how we can collectively try to move the needle on some of these things.
And the reality is the Poor People's Campaign is about starting with the bottom and going up, as opposed to starting with the top and coming down. We have the numbers. We outnumber all of the wealthy people in the country. But there are wealthy people who recognize that living moral lives is important. So we don't disqualify anyone because they have wealth or because they're middle class. We want everyone who is concerned about the rights of all human beings in this country to be a part of this. And that's why we have partners who will have 5 minutes to talk about their particular efforts to make not only Jonesboro and Northeast Arkansas, but America better.
And I want to list those partners real quick. They are First Presbyterian, St. Mark Episcopal, Miller's Temple Kojic, Unitarian Universalist, Islamic Center of Jonesboro, Precious Love Christian, Arkansas United, Future for Felons, Moms Demand Action, Pride, Human Rights Campaign, and
Decarcerate.
I'm sorry?
Decarcerate.
Okay, I'm sorry. Decarcerate. And then Iman Abdurrahman. Oh, I'm sorry.
And we also have Future for Felons, which is not listed on that particular.
It's listed on the program. And so please, again, go out and support this event. This will be from 10 a.m. to 12 noon at the First Presbyterian Church at 710 Southwest Drive in their fellowship hall here in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And will lunch be provided?
Yes.
Okay, lunch will be provided. So please go out, fellowship, listen to conversation, join the conversation. Join the conversation. Okay. Are there some more key points? I want to talk about fair housing, just real quick before we go to break. Can you give us some insight into how individuals that live in poverty are marginalized or discriminated against when it comes to housing?
Oh, that's very easy. People have to have somewhere to live. And for instance, of course this is not here, but I believe in Miami, is that where Walt Disney?
Orlando.
Orlando. Well, I saw on PBS where one family lived in a garage of 4. A family of 4 lived in a garage, and they paid $1,000 just to live in that garage. Now, the mother made minimum wage. So if prices increase, regardless of your level of income, you are desperate, you become desperate trying to find a place to house your family. And so that's how people are impacted. If you don't make enough money, you can't rent. in particular places. Just can't do it.
Even in Jonesboro, there are places that are, $500,000 or better. And again, if a family is only making $9, $10, maybe $12 an hour after taxes, then that doesn't leave a lot for expenses. Rent is going to take their whole check, but there's utilities, groceries, and whatever else they need. So that's why some people are having to try to find a way around the system or do the system and try to find ways to meet their needs. And they may not always be the legal ways, but that's not my
I did want to add that people within the LGBTQ plus community are more likely to be discriminated. There are no laws for protection, so renters can discriminate against someone for being part of the community. And on top of that, a lot of homeless shelters also discriminate against people that are part of the community. And that can just, being part of identifying as queer or trans or anything along those lines, you're more likely to have to be homeless than someone that identifies with their born sex or their if they're heterosexual. So yeah, that's another problem that we have within the community.
Outside of individuals just feeling however they feel about it, what have been some of the reasons, or what have been some of the justified reasons of why those individuals are discriminated against? And I use justified in quotes because justified, unjustified reasons.
There's a lot of transphobia. There's transphobia within a lot of communities, and that's even including within the LGBTQ community. There is there can be transphobia. So a lot of the fear is that a man that's dressing up as a woman is will rape someone, even though that's never happened, as far as I'm aware.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. I want to say good morning to Ms. Rebecca Laura Evans. She says thank you, Paul. When we come back, we will wrap up our discussion. So stay tuned. You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
We're back with Money Matters. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. Every time you change jobs, you have to make some key decisions, including perhaps what to do with the 401k retirement savings you have with your current, soon-to-be former, employer. You have two options. One, you can roll it into your new employer's plan after a job move. The other option is to roll it into an IRA or individual retirement account. This could give you more investment choices than a typical 401k with lower cost to operate. Either way, do not give in to the temptation to just cash out of your 401k before the age of 59 and a half. Also, if your current employer offers a company match, try not to leave your job before it has vested. Otherwise, you are literally leaving money on the table. Check with your HR department to be clear about the terms of vesting at your company. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. for Money Matters at AURN.com.
Money Matters is brought to you by Bancorp South, offering checking, savings, loans, credit cards, and wealth management. 5 locations in Jonesboro to serve you. www.bancorpsouth.com or 870-972-9800.
Money Matters is brought to you by the Gears Foundation, a nonprofit organization providing students with assistance in their academic and career pursuits. Gears Foundation on Facebook, Gears_Inc. on Instagram, and the Gears Foundation at gmail.com.
KLEK thanks CJ Pepper and the staff of Life Strategies Counseling Incorporated for helping people through hard times in life such as depression, family issues, stress, abuse, and more. They offer counseling and therapy for all ages, individuals, families, and groups. They are located at 1217 Stone Street. Phone number 1-866-972-1268 or online at lscihelp.com.
Support for KLEK is brought to you by
the story about when he was stationed overseas and he had an accident in his car and had to have the fender painted. Took it to a body shop. We went to pick it up. Fender didn't match. He told him that I needed to match to be acceptable. He went back a few days and everything matched fine. He took it home. The next day, looked at it. They painted the rest of the side of the car. It didn't match the trunk or the hood. Glenn saying, God bless our troops.
The McDaniel Law Firm, 400 South Main Street in Jonesboro, is a firm believer in justice and equality for the minority community. The McDaniel Law Firm has fought for our rights for over 44 years. The McDaniel Law Firm offers legal help for wrongful death as well as trucking and automobile accidents. Bobby and Brett McDaniel are available for a free consultation at 870-336-4747 or at www.mcdaniellawyers.com.
The Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated was established on January 1st, 1977, originally serving Blytheville, Arkansas, and now serving Jonesboro, Blytheville, Osceola, Marion, and West Memphis, Arkansas. Today, the chapter continues to make an impact by focusing on Alpha's national community outreach initiatives such as My Brother's Keeper, A Voteless People is a Hopeless People, Go to High School, Go to College, Project Alpha, Boy Scouts, and the March of Dimes. The Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is committed to Alpha's mission of developing leaders, promoting brotherhood and academic excellence, while providing service and advocacy to the community. More information about the Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is available at MOL Alphas on Facebook or via email at molalphas@gmail.com.
KLEK 102.5 FM salutes small businesses. Small businesses promote local character and success, keeping money in the local economy, local jobs, entrepreneurship, community well-being, and so much more. Contact us today to learn more on how your small business could be featured on KLEK for as little as $25 per month.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
Unfortunately, Ms. Yesenia has to leave us, but we still have Reverend Dr. Joshua Daniel, Reverend C.W. Campbell, and Mr. Kaleem Nazim. And so, with this being our wrap-up session, we have covered quite a bit of material, and I really hope that everyone make plans to come out on tomorrow. Again, September 21st, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, the Northeast Arkansas Regional Meeting for the Poor People's Campaign. This is a national call for moral revival. All right? First Presbyterian Church, 710 Southwest Drive in their fellowship hall. There will be various partners represented. They will be given some time to speak, and they'll be speaking on various issues that relate to poor people, those living in poverty, and hopefully those that don't necessarily live in poverty will still attend the meeting and listen to what others have to say and join the conversation and keep the conversation going. So during this last segment, I'm just going to let each individual go around and give a statement and share any final thoughts of things we did not get to cover. So, Dr. Joshua?
Oh, well, thanks. Thanks again for having us here. It's been great to be here for my first time. Just wanted to say, CW mentioned that America was founded in racism, but the other through line for America was at least a sense of wanting to be a country of justice. That the founding documents speak about the equality of all people, and similarly with our own scriptures, that all people are created in God's image, even though the church has not acted that way. And so that's the sense of a moral revival, is calling ourselves to so many of the things that we've committed ourselves to and yet have failed to bring about. So we welcome all people from all different perspectives to participate in these conversations.
This is Kaleem Nazim, and I just want to say that this is a call for more revival, and also I want to just speak on one of the myths that's out there, because the campaign is also tasked with destroying some of the distorted narratives and myths that are lingering out there. Well, in particular, when it comes to people who have felonies, they say that you can't vote. Well, that's a myth. What it is if you're not on parole or any kind of paper probation or anything like that, there you are allowed to vote. So I just want to take that time to destroy that one particular myth. Dr. Campbell.
Again, we're grateful for KLEK and for the listening audience for allowing us to come into your home or as you drive up and down the streets. I do want to make just one additional point. I am in the PhD program at A-State, Heritage Studies. What I have looked at in terms of European Christianity, if you did not believe in Christ, you were considered an infidel. And if you were an infidel, then you could be subjected to slavery. Well, they also considered you not a human being. And so that is the reality of the founding of this country. If you were not white, then you were not human. And if you were not Christian, then you could be enslaved, whether you were black, white, green, red, or yellow. But now we have progressed as a nation, and we hope that we will continue to progress even more so to where we all can embrace each other as human beings.
So again, I want to go through some of these topics again. Systems of poverty. You know, as you discussed before, there are many systematic systems that are set up to work against individuals who are trying to come up, who are trying to make a decent living and just make a life for themselves and their families. We that know better and know that it's morally not right need to speak up and speak out against these different systems. A lot of people are afraid to speak up and speak out because of the potential backlash that they can receive, their reputation, their jobs, their livelihood, whatever the case may be. Well, no, we hope those individuals find some way to use their voice. My philosophy is the pen is mightier than the sword, and I live by that. I don't like to fight, I don't like to argue, but I will get on the computer and type up a nice little letter and do some research, and I can hit you harder with my words than with my hand. So find some way to get involved, no matter how big or how small. All right, we have about 2.5 minutes left, so any final words? Anything else, gentlemen? We just want everyone to come out to the meeting.
Right, we do want to announce that it will be held at the First Presbyterian Church at 710 Southwest Drive on tomorrow, Saturday morning, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And we will not only have food for the brain, we'll also have something for the stomach. Right. Praise the Lord.
And I want to touch on real quick, environmental injustice. And I don't know if I'm thinking about this in the way that it's meant. In one of my classes, we learned about how people that live in poor communities are subject to pollution at a higher rate due to factories and other things, in particular factories that have the waste that come off whatever the products they're making. They're often situated in communities that don't speak up or don't know how to speak up and protect themselves. That's my thought process on the environmental. I could be wrong.
No, you're absolutely correct. Those communities have those factories there, etc., because they could not prevent them from being located there. The other communities that are more wealthier, they can prevent such locations. The community, or should I say the area that they're in, they want the industry, but they are not policing the pollution.
And sadly, this is another conversation for another day, but due to federal regulations, some companies can get around their waste, how much they produce in waste and the fines and blah, blah, blah. So that's another conversation, but we thank everyone for tuning in, for listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. Thank you, gentlemen, and Ms. Yesenia for coming today. We hope everyone has a great and blessed day. Don't forget about the NAACP Gala, the Freedom Fund Gala tonight at Centennial Hall, Arkansas State University. It's going to be a really great event. And then tomorrow, 10 a.m., go out to the Poor People's Campaign open meeting. We hope to see as many people in the community there from all walks of life and all backgrounds. Thank you all. Have a great day, and we'll join us on Monday for our Fall Fundraising Pledge Drive.
Thank you for listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
Broadcasting from the First National Bank Tower, this is KLEK-LP Jonesboro, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council.
Good Friday morning, Jonesboro. This is meteorologist Tim Root with your KLEK 102.5 forecast. Partly to mostly cloudy today and tonight. Scattered rain showers and a few thunderstorms expected. There might be some moderate to heavy rain, and the temperatures in the mid-80s during the day, around 70 tonight, all related to the dissipating tropical system moving up from Texas. Saturday and Sunday, a slight chance of a shower or thunderstorm, partly sunny in the mid to upper 80s, and this weekend is the last weekend of summer. Fall arrives